So does this work? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? If I can be so bold, can I ask you to come closer? So especially those, this is not on? I think it's on, yeah. Well, you are welcome to come sit right over here next to me if you'd like to. But I do want to invite, especially those in the back, feel free to come closer. If I had my choice, I'd be standing right over there, but I understand that might be a problem for the system. So, something just happened there. Yeah, so come close. It makes me feel hugged. That's what I like. I want to feel hugged. Let's refrain from getting into fist fights in shul, please. Exactly. It's not what I said. Rabbi, are we good to start? Good? Okay. All right, friends. I'm going to introduce myself again just for a second. I'm Yaakov Fruchter. Let's start with a story. So there's a young girl was walking with her father to shul, and the girls asked her dad, "Why do you go to shul? Why do you go to synagogue?" And the father said, "Well, I go to synagogue because Chaim Goldberg talks to God." So the next time they walked again, daughter asked her father, "Daddy, why do you go to shul?" And he said, "Chaim Goldberg goes to shul to talk to God." She's not quite satisfied. Next time they're walking once again. "But Daddy, tell me really, why do you go to shul?" He said, "Chaim Goldberg goes to shul to talk to God. But what about you? Why do you go to shul?" And she says, "Well, Chaim Goldberg goes to shul to talk to God, and I go to shul to be with Chaim Goldberg." Right? It's an old one. I told it a little differently, changed some genders. I know the names. Yes, an old one. Okay, before we really start, I want you to take a moment and think about your answer to that question. Why do you go to shul? And if going to synagogue is not something you do regularly and you're just here because you're a part of my cheerleading squad or whatever it is, still, why do you go to spaces to be in spiritual spaces with other Jews? Why do you do it? What's your reason? So think about it for a moment. For those of you at home, do the same thing. And if you have somebody with you, you can do this next part. If not, I'm feeling the energy of it. I want you to turn to somebody else, okay? Ideally somebody who you didn't come with and you don't know super, super well, and just tell them your name, okay? Maybe behind you, probably not right next to you, maybe. And tell them your name and just answer that question for a moment. Why do you come to shul? Okay, friends, I have to bring it back. You're not done. That's it. Your time is up. Okay, so I know, by the way, anytime I give people the opportunity to speak to each other, that then I'm interrupting you, and it's a whole thing. But I love that when we turn to each other, we actually have a lot to say, right? And we can easily build community, and yet we don't do it all the time, right? I think in every synagogue, in every community, there are people who show up and they leave without having anyone even say hi to them. Certainly not ask them a question that goes beyond the basics of what's your name. And I think, although, as I mentioned before, that I was really moved by the way the welcoming happened over here, and I think it's a really, it's a good sign for this community. It's not just about one person who stands at the door, it's about how all of us are constantly helping other people feel. So the talk today is titled Relational Judaism, Creating Spiritual Communities Through Caring Relationships. What I love is that we all actually come for multiple reasons or for different reasons, and that's wonderful. So I'm not for a second coming up here to say, like, oh, you have to come for this reason. That's the only reason to come to shul. The beauty is that we're a mixed group in so many ways, and the needs that we have are different, and what we're looking for is different. And to me, that's just really exciting. You have these? Everybody okay? So I know those of you at home don't, but I'll try my best to guide you as we go through this process. I want to share a quote. I mentioned Blue Greenberg before. Now I'm going to mention her husband, Rabah Yitz Greenberg. So the Torah starts with this teaching that all human beings are created in the image of God, B'Tselem Elokim. And this is Rabbi Yitz Greenberg's, and if you Google him after, you might find it easier with Irving Greenberg, but Rabbi Greenberg, his teaching on those words of what it means to be in the image of God. Because all human beings are created in the image of God, we are endowed with three intrinsic dignities: infinite value, equality, and uniqueness. That everybody is valuable, everybody is equal, I am not better than anybody else, and we're all special in our own way. We are all unique. There's a teaching from Pirkei Avot, right? There's actually a practice of learning between Pesach and Shavuot, learning from the Mishnah of Avot, ethics or wisdom of our fathers. And Ben Zoma famously teaches, I imagine many of you know this, what does it mean to be honorable? What does it mean to be rich? Or who is rich? Who is... His answer for Miu Chacham, who is wise, Halomed Mikol Adam, the one who learns from everybody. I actually tried to live my life holding on to these two ideas. Rabbi Yitz Greenberg's teaching on B'Tselem Elokim, on being in the image of God, and Ben Zoma's teaching of who is wise. That in every moment, in every situation, there is a live human being in front of me that I can learn something from. Their story, the wisdom that they have, their life experiences, which are all wrapped really in one. And I think that's ultimately where caring communities come from. A curiosity about the other and a belief that the person in front of us matters, and that by knowing them, I can enrich my life. And if we can enter community in that way, first of all, I think our lives will just be better. And we're also going to help other people feel important, loved, and cared for. I like to say, especially to conversion students that I'm working with, a lot of them have incredible faith, and the biggest challenge that they have is building community. So I always say to them that Judaism is not and has never been a solo sport. So much so that the rabbi has to tell us, okay, stand up and now try to be quiet for 2 minutes and do your private Amidah, right? It's like, we don't really do things that way. It's not meant to be a solo sport, and yet there are people who are constantly feeling alone and isolated. We have felt that the most in COVID, but many of us felt it before and still feel it now. The first, the source sheet got a little bit messed up, but where you have number 1 over here. So we're going to do some Torah learning. I'm also, at some point, because we're going to run out of time, I'm just going to rattle off a list of some best practices that I've noticed and found. Some of them, most of them I use. So this is from the Gemara, from Masechet Sota. There's a question that comes up. It says in the Torah, in the book of Dvarim, in Deuteronomy, there's a line that says, Acharei Hashem lokechem telechu. That you shall walk in God's way. So I'm on the second page now won't spend too much time in the text itself, but basically this is how it goes. Torah teaches us that we're supposed to walk in God's way. How can we possibly walk in God's way? God can't walk. What does that look like? And so right away the rabbis understand it means to be God-like. So as we are b'tselem Elokim, that we have to live in that way, in God's image, and we should follow God's attributes. So what does that mean? Can we actually follow the divine presence in that way? So it teaches, just as God clothed the naked, and just as God visited the sick, and just as God consoled mourners, and just as God buried the dead, we can do those things as well. And then there's beautiful explanations of different moments where God does that, clothes people, cares for people who are grieving, buries people, visits the sick. So it's a quick and incomplete list of ways that we can care for people in community. Some of the most important things we know, that people need to have clothing when they're suffering the most, be cared for, not feel alone, and what we call chesed shel emet, a act of kindness that can't be ever repaid, is when we care for those who are no longer alive and for their family members. I want to tell you a story that's probably the best model I can think of what it means to be a part of a caring community. And it's a story that's a part of my mother's story, and in that way also part of my story. So my mom had her Shabbat afternoon walking group. And she would go every Shabbat afternoon. They'd walk for about, half an hour, 40 minutes. They'd pick each other up along the way. And it always ended with some dessert full of calories that negated their walk. And they would always go into someone's home. And they would rotate. They would come into each other's homes, which is so key. As my mother got sicker, she dealt with and lived with cancer for 5 years. As she got sicker, she was no longer able to go on these walks, or it became more and more difficult for her. So eventually, they started including her only towards the end, and then she would walk with them, and they would make sure that the house where they were eating was close enough. When that wasn't possible, somebody would wheel her. And at the very end, they would just come to her place and would have their desserts there. And in the Shabbat, I always tear up a little bit when I talk about this, so you'll excuse me. In the Shabbat, after she passed away and we had her Shiva, the same crew came together that Shabbat afternoon for their treats in our home to be with our family. Okay, enough tears for the moment. And that was, to me, that's the model. It's the ideal situation. As I mentioned earlier in the Dvar Torah, somebody is suffering, we notice it, we continue to be with them and care for them, and find a way to be inclusive of them for as long as possible. Sorry, I've made some of you tear up as well, I can see. Okay. I'm going to give you now an example of the exact opposite. I don't know if it's exactly the opposite. It gets better in the story, but something quite different. You'll find this, its source has a little 3 next to it. It's on page 4. This is from Masechet Yoma. Do you see it where it says Yoma 35b towards the bottom of the page? So, count the covers, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the bottom. It's a story, you okay? Everyone found it? Story of Hillel. Famous Hillel, the Jewish student organization named after this guy. And he's known as actually being quite poor. They said about Hillel the elder that each and every day he would work and earn half a dinar, which is a small amount of money. half of which he would give to the guard of the study hall, and half of which he spent for his sustenance and the sustenance of the members of his family. Big rabbi, right? But he didn't have a lot of money. So half the money that he would make every single day would go to pay to the Beit Midrash, to the house of study. They would go learn in, basically to a synagogue. He would pay synagogue dues, which was half of his money every single day. One time he did not find employment to earn a wage, shows up to the houses of study, to the study hall, and the guard's at the door. And the guard says, sorry, you don't have money, you can't come in. So what does Hillel do? He says, no, I need to learn. So he climbs up onto the roof, and there was a skylight there, puts his ear to it, and he listens to the Torah, as it says here, to the Torah of the living God from the mouths of the two great rabbis, Shammai and Avtalion, who were the great spiritual leaders of the generation. That day was Friday night, season of Tevet, so it's the winter. Snow starts to fall as he's lying there with his ears, trying to just sneak in some Torah. Snow continues to fall until he's covered. In the morning, when it was dawn, Shammai and Avtalion, the two rabbis, look at each other and they say, pretty sure it's morning, but there's no sunlight coming in. What is going on? And so they look and they say, there's something blocking. And so they climb up to the roof, and there they find Hillel, covered in 3 cubits high of snow, which is like quite a bit of snow. It was a good Winnipeg snowfall. They dug him out, brought him down, washed him, smeared oil on him. Seems like they kindled a fire for him. And they said, this man is worthy for us to desecrate Shabbat for him. Saving life overrides Shabbat in any case. However, this great man is especially deserving. And then I made some little mistake there, so you can ignore that stuff at the end. He came every single day to learn, and when he couldn't pay that one time, he was turned away. Question for you: who's the bad guy in this story? Is there a bad guy in this story? Anybody? Yeah.
No, not the way I see it, in as much as things need to have a factor that causes things to happen. If he would have been accepted, this mitzvah that was made and this lesson that was taught would never have had the opportunity of being.
Okay. I don't love the theology of it, that we needed this person to suffer so that we can learn a mitzvah, but I do connect to the idea that there are moments where we can then step up in community because somebody is suffering. Thank you. That was actually really thoughtful. Other answers?
So would it be too obvious to say that the person at the door comes across as not?
Yeah, he seems to be excluding the person. And then I start to think, but what's his situation? Maybe he's let him in many times before and he's about to get fired. And maybe he has 4 kids and he just arrived from Ukraine and I don't know about him. Yeah.
So this is kind of out of left field. Sorry, but the community itself should be providing sustenance to its people.
So the community should be providing sustenance, so maybe it's the community itself that's at fault. But communities, as we all know, need money to exist, to be able to do all those things. So we need people to pay for membership and dues and to contribute and to give extra tzedakah and all of that. But great, these are all great answers, yeah.
If the shomer is at the door every day, and Hillel was paying his tithing every day, and now he's showing up without the tithing, the shomer should have asked, is there a problem?
It's really beautiful that if he arrives every day, then how come the shomer didn't engage him in a conversation? What is going on, right? What happened today? How might I be able to help you? You know what? Maybe you can't come in today, but maybe I can find you something to eat. Or do you know where is your family okay? All these things could have been asked. Okay, one more. Anybody else have one? No. Great. Oh, there.
We could blame the shomer, but somebody else should have been there to see the situation. He was rejected, and he went around, he climbed the roof. Nobody else saw him, nobody else was looking around, standing by the door, entering the house of study, and stood up for him.
Yeah. Nobody noticed he wasn't there. They didn't look for him. Other people didn't say, oh, there's somebody climbing the roof, and what's going on over here, right? As much as we all love the fiddler on the roof, the guy with his ear there is not really how the story goes. So again, maybe it's community. Maybe there's a community that doesn't know how to listen quite in the way, or to notice, to pay attention. I find it very easy to forgive everybody, and also to find everyone at fault. The other thing that I also wonder about is, I taught this recently to I have a group of young leaders in the synagogue. It's a program through USCJ, through the conservative movement. They have something called Shalom, the ladder for emerging leaders, and so I've been doing this training together with our past president, and we learned this text together. And one of the things that came up that no one's mentioned here so far is, he's the bad guy. He doesn't have any money, and it's Friday night. Why isn't he with his family? What's going on? Hillel needs to be home. So another way to think about it. Or we can think of all of them as good guys, and everyone's flawed, and it's okay. They're just human. But to me, this is a model that I like to look at in terms of where maybe even what seems like a beautiful spiritual community, where usually he feels connected and involved and can learn, and he loves it because he's willing to even go up on the roof. He wants to be a part of this, that sometimes even amazing communities fall down. We have some cracks, and then we try to correct those. Let's look at one more text, and then I'll jump into some of the best practice stuff that I promised. This one is on page 2. Or, sorry, it's where the little 2 is, so it's on page 3. This comes up in the Torah right after, seems to be, it's different commentaries on exactly what the order is, but this story comes up after Exodus from Egypt, after the splitting of the Red Sea, and they are now in Mount Sinai at the foot, and they are ready to receive the Torah. And who shows up? Moshe's father-in-law comes, and we always get the best wisdom from our in-laws. My mother-in-law's here, so. And Moshe's father-in-law, Yitro, shows up, so much so that the Torah portion in which we receive the Torah is not called Matan Torah or 10 Commandments or anything like that. It's called Yitro, because he does something pretty amazing. In fact, he saves the community. Yitro arrives, blesses God for all the miracles that he's heard about. Imagine he embraces Moshe, gives him a big hug. And then suddenly he starts to observe what he notices. And what he notices is that all day and night, Moshe has a long line of people that are coming to ask him for advice. Long line of people. Any question that they have, right? They're now free. And now they're trying to figure out, what does it mean for us to have a caring community? How do we build community together now that we actually have some power? We're no longer slaves. And that's what the Torah is going to help them figure out. But they haven't gotten it yet. And they have a million questions. So there's this ongoing Ask the Rabbi session that's happening. But it's happening one by one by one by one. And Moshe's sitting there all day and night. And his father-in-law sees this, Vayachaten Moshe, everything that's happening. And he says, what is this thing that you are doing to the people? Love that language. Look what you're doing to the people by doing this alone. Madua ata yoshev levadecha. You're sitting all by yourself, and the entire nation is camped out in front of you in line from the early morning until late at night. And Moshe says, listen, they want my advice. They come to me. They want to know what God wants. And when they have questions between people, I'm the judge. I figure things out. I give them advice. These couples, they're struggling a little bit. I'm trying to support them. And I tell them what's what. And Yitro, his father-in-law, says to him, Lo tov hadavar, this thing you are doing is not good. Navol tibol gamata gam ha'am hazeh asher imach, ki chaved mimcha hadavar lo tuchal asau levadecha. He says, you're going to collapse. You're going to be burnt out. And you're going to ruin this whole project. Both you and the people, this nation with you. And here's the really important language. He says, Ki chaved mimcha davar. This thing is too big for you. It is too much of a burden to carry it alone. You can't do it, just you. You have to bring other people in. I love this text, right? It's Moshe, the great leader, the one who was able to pay attention and, see the burning bush and free the people. And despite his disability, is able to take the people out and to find a voice. And still Moshe says to him, his father-in-law Yitro says to him, despite how charismatic you are and your direct line with God, you can't do it alone. You need to bring people with you. So the first best practice I'm going to share with you is really about that. Is the communities need lots and lots and lots of people to sustain itself, to do everything that needs to be done. Right? And it's actually sort of my overall big message is that you can do so many things, and synagogues and all spiritual communities do not work when you rely on just a few people. When you rely on just a few people to visit the sick, on just a few people to lead services, to read the Torah, on just a few people to welcome people in, right? The list can go on and on and on of what communities need volunteers for. But there is a need for every group of leaders to figure out how to let others in. And even Moshe struggles with that. But there was a time where I think as a Jewish community we were a little bit better at it. And now we've become a little bit more closed in. We want people to be involved, but we don't actually know exactly how to welcome them in. There is a book that I love. It's called Relational Judaism by Professor Ron Wolfson. Anybody know him? Some of you maybe read some of his stuff. He was here, so many of you know him. That's great. He's really fantastic. He came to speak to the synagogue? Okay. So that is his whole thing right now. That's what he focuses on, is how do we build communities of care and do it through relationships, right? That's his thing. He wrote a book, and there was a second book. How long ago was he here? Many years ago. Okay, so before publishing these books, yeah. No? The books were out. Okay. Okay. Good. You're all listening. That's good. So Ron Wolfson has been here before. His second book, I use almost as like my companion Torah these days. It's called the Relational Judaism Handbook. And what it does is it takes sort of the principles of how we build caring communities and tells communities, synagogues, follow this path. and this will help you, of how to get more people involved, how to care better, how to be warmer, how to be more loving, how to make it so people don't feel isolated or left out. It's an ongoing struggle. Like, no community is perfect at it. If I say hi to someone, somebody else is mad that the other person didn't say hi to, everything happens, of course, because people are complicated. One of the things that we brought to our synagogue in Toronto and Bet Tzedek, which is a huge synagogue, is really the need to create more intimacy between our members. This belief that it was really wonderful they were coming to synagogue. People were getting better at talking to each other. We will often, in the middle of a service, say, hey, say Shabbat Shalom to each other, find someone you don't know. We use relational questions, like the one that I used at the beginning, where I asked you to share something with someone else. We do that in almost every single program, every single class. We do that all the time. We also felt, though, that in our community, we don't have the practice of people inviting each other home on Shabbat morning after shul. Most people, go to Kiddush and then don't have a Shabbat lunch after that. So they're not inviting each other over. Friday nights tend to be about being with the bubby, right? Being with your parents and your grandparents. And so there wasn't a lot of people bringing each other over. And as a community like Toronto, there's a lot of people moving in, like myself. I talk with my hands. It's one of the casualties of me being me. A friend of mine once told me I should put 2 paintbrushes in my hands all the time and just see what happens, and maybe some art will emerge. But in a community like ours, we realized that if we really wanted to have people have the connections and the caring relationships that we want, we have to start getting them into each other's homes. So we tried different things, like having Shabbats where everybody invites somebody over. And then I learned from Ron Wolfson and some of his co-authors of the handbook about small groups. And that was actually one of the things that changed the reality for us at Bet Tzedek. So what small groups are, and I have some more information about how ours works that you can look at after. But it's basically, we find leaders, and we ask people who we think would be great at this, who are sort of naturally interested in others and who have interesting things that they do. We ask them the question, if you could choose one activity that you can do with a group of 10 to 15 people, what would it be? We ask them if they would volunteer then to do this and to lead a group that meets once a month. That was the idea. You're going to meet once a month. You're going to do different things. Some of them are going to be learning in groups. Some of them are going to be doing art. Some are going to be biking groups, all sorts of things. The only rule is that you have somebody who leads. And what we really wanted was it to be in someone's home, ideally, or at least start in someone's home. There'd be some food, a relational question, an opportunity to name and celebrate milestones. And the job of the leader is also to notice who didn't show up that month, to send the emails, the invites, who didn't show up, and to follow up with them. And then becoming the ears for us as a spiritual leadership on the ground, letting us know when someone's mentioned that they're struggling, obviously with permission, but that something happened. They lost a family member, they're not feeling well, they need help getting to an appointment, they're feeling lonely, or a great simcha has happened, something really joyous, they're marking something, and then we can know about it and then we can become a part of it. We can step in and help, or we can just congratulate someone, but things that we otherwise don't really know about. And so suddenly we have dozens of people in the community who have their groups, and they're meeting once a month, and they are building community together for us and with us. We train them, all the leaders, so we have coaches. We have our small groups leadership team that I work with. We train all the leaders at the beginning, because it's not always natural for everyone, and some people don't like doing relational questions, so we give them a chance to practice. But it has actually transformed our community. Unfortunately for us, timing was a bit of an issue because we were working on this and launching our small groups in January 2020. And we were going to launch them in the fall, right after the high holidays, so people will be able to sign up through the high holidays. Great way to do it. And then they start meeting once a month. And then we realized we probably won't be able to invite each other into our homes, which is something we really wanted. And then we realized, wow, how lucky are we that we've already started tapping all these potential leaders, and we just moved everything onto Zoom. And so in this time of major isolation, we had hundreds of people who were gathering in small groups once a month, doing some activity together and checking in. Small groups is one way to do it. I actually think every community already naturally has some of these groups that exist, the sisterhoods, the brotherhoods, the people who, play card games together or volunteer together and do all sorts of things. So I know you have some of those things here. But we invited others in to take a leadership role, right? We invited others to think about what are the things that they love doing, what gives them ruach, raises their spirits, and how can they do that with others? All right, a few other things that we do on a regular basis. First of all, name tags. So we all wear them. I saw that a couple of you were wearing them as well. I'm horrible at names. You've all introduced yourself to me. I have no idea what your names are, just so you know. So I will keep on asking. Some communities actually try to get everybody to wear name tags and actually keep them in a box for the synagogue. That hasn't worked for us. When we have Shabbat dinners, so we have once a month we have family Shabbat dinners right now for people with young kids, and we have about 200 people who come out. They all wear name tags. We have 100 people who come to our 20s and 30s, young adult, like without kids, Shabbat dinners. They wear name tags, and they love it. Some people are like, at the end of the day, they want to know each other's names. They don't want the awkwardness of it. It's nice to say, hi, I'm Yaakov. And I find it works really well. Some of you can roll your eyes. That's totally fine. We track everything at our synagogue. The work that we do as a spiritual leadership team, whether we're meeting somebody for coffee, and we have, in the years that I've been in the synagogue, I try to have 100 coffee dates every single year. And most of the time I come pretty close to it. So 100 coffee, it's the number I aim for. Just coffee, but we track that. Every time we visit someone who's sick, or a phone call, every time we call somebody on their birthday, which we do. We've now synagogue's quite big, so we only do it for special occasions, but if it's your 50th birthday or special anniversaries, we track all of that. So anytime we have a meeting with somebody connected to leadership, we track it. So we know what's happening in our community, and when somebody else has to step in, we have all the information. We're not just tracking on a number. We have our CRM, our customer relationship management tool, and we use it. And it has transformed also our ability to know our community and to take care of them. We have to be aware of accessibility within our synagogues in every way possible. That people feel that they can participate, as we say in the Shema, with our whole hearts, our whole bodies, every parts of us, that we can participate in all the ways that we are able. Bet Tzedek's not perfect at this, but we really try as much as we can. We bring the bima down for people to have aliyot if they can't come up. Language we've adopted, which other synagogues do this as well, is we no longer say, please rise. We say, please rise as you are able to, because everybody can rise up in some way. Right? And just a few examples where we try to make ourselves easy to become part of. We also, I just want to show you this for a moment. This is on there's a lot of pages here. Right after the Yoma 35b, you have this. See this little star thing here? So those are, I'm sorry if you can't see that well, the words inside there. That is an accessibility issue, so I apologize. Our mission statement at Bet Tzedek is we are inspiring and enabling our community to lead meaningful Jewish lives. In other words, we want Torah and Judaism, as the rabbi spoke about before, to be able to bring light to people, to help us in our most difficult moments. And so these 6 points of the star for us is the core values. And everything that we do, every program we do, every class that we teach, every volunteer experience, we come back and say, how does this fit? So before we run it, like, does this actually make sense? And are we doing enough of the things that we want to do, and who are we leaving out? So our 6 values are care, connect, giving and getting, celebrate, pray, and learn. And the reason I'm saying these is that for organizations to do really well, all organizations, and synagogues are not immune to this, we need to know what our mission is. We need to know what we believe in and what we stand for, and to just do them and bring, again, as many people as possible into the mix to be able to participate with us in doing that. That is especially true when it comes to a connected, caring community, which are 2 of our values over here, is that we have to have other people along with us in this journey. Bethesda participated this past year along with, I think, 5 other synagogues in the U.S. The Institute for Jewish Leadership, called Klal, based out of the U.S., together with the Springtide Research Institute, organized a belonging survey. So we sent the survey to our community members, trying to figure out, where do people feel the most belonging? Where do people, when they come to shul, when they come to synagogue, where do they connect most and feel like, oh, these are the moments that help me feel like they belong? What you're probably not surprised to hear is that interactions with the spiritual leadership, with the clergy and the rabbis, was at 90%, that when you have that time. Small groups was pretty close at 87%. That people who participate in things like that feel a part of community and that they belong. Virtual programming, actually as important as it is, only came in at 60%. I think that's actually a really important one, is that although it has played a really important role, it doesn't actually help a lot of the time people feel less isolated and that they belong. Those of you at home, I hope you aren't feeling that way right now. I hope you feel connected to this and you can participate. But it's really hard. And I know that in this synagogue, there's great resources and great skills have been put to make it work. So probably you would score better. But the average, and these are 6 really large synagogues, is that it's not as good. And my guess is that this was actually done a year ago. My guess is that the numbers would even be lower for that one right now. And it goes on. Shabbat services was like 80%. When people are going to educational programs, it's lower. It's only in the 60s. But those are all moments that it could change, right? If we treat all of those moments as relational opportunities, right? Not as something where someone's coming to learn and leave, but where someone is coming to be part of community. So how do we change that experience, right? How do we make it not just about, we were talking last night about a transactional community. How do we make it relational? So these are the things I'm talking about. One of the things that I did, and I encourage as many of you as possible to do this, is community organizing training. There's a Jewish organization in the U.S. called Join for Justice, which is about teaching people how to organize, which Winnipeg has an incredible history of this, of people knowing how to organize, right? In order to affect change. And we have to treat our synagogues in that way also, right? We have to treat our communities as a project that we are all working on. And so actually getting training from Join for Justice for your leadership, both for lay leaders and staff, is always a really great move. Okay, how else do we help people feel connected? Visit people. Everybody, visit people. You can all take people on coffee dates. It's not creepy, even though we call it coffee dates. It's okay. Nobody ever said, these are all things that work. Okay, I'm going to share one last one, and then maybe we'll take a couple of questions if there are any. We did something quite drastic. I put at the very end over here, there's a link over here, just Google it, that was in JTA late last month about our synagogue. And the title is How One of North America's Largest Conservative Congregations Added 900 New Members in 8 months. So what we did at Bet Tzedek, after putting all these other things in place, feeling like we have become better at having a relational, caring community, wasn't overnight. We said, okay, now we're ready to do the next thing. And what we did was we announced to the community that if you are under 40 years old, we are no longer charging membership. We have a nice, healthy budget at Bet Tzedek. We're lucky we have some resources. What we found is that by doing this, it cost the synagogue $50,000 in lost revenue from people who otherwise would have paid, which was really mostly their parents paying. And we forced on their own, they had to sign themselves up, fill out a form, tell us things about themselves, and then create the potential to go on a coffee date with me and all the spiritual leaders and my fellow partners of the staff at the synagogue. And 900 new members joined us. So we're now completing the first year. So we just launched this last July. And so 900, that means lots of strollers in synagogue, right? I also want to say that there are some people in our community, especially older people, who felt actually left out and isolated by this, right? We know that there's a lot of adults who are also struggling to pay membership dues. We think that the ideal is actually to find a way to not have to charge at all membership, and we're working in Bet Tzedek in different ways of doing that. That might feel completely far-fetched here. I don't think it's impossible to have under 40-year-olds come for free. My guess is, I don't have the number yet, but my guess is your numbers aren't that high of members in that age group, and that your revenue's not that high of members in that age group. So that's it. If you're willing to give that up for a little bit, you have an amazing community, right? You already have an amazing community with great spiritual leaders, a great team who really cares about people, a wonderful board, I know, because I had Shabbat dinner with some of them last night. People who love Winnipeg, love being Jewish. But a lot of young Jews in this community don't know why at this moment it would be useful for them to be a part of your community. And they certainly don't want to spend money on it at the moment. And so if you bring them in, and you show them great programs. And 5 years ago, I sat in when your cantor was leading one of the family services. I was in town, I think it was maybe over Pesach, with my children, and they didn't want to come, so I sat in by myself. And I remember Phyllis welcoming me, actually, to that service. And it was beautiful, and it was vibrant. And you could have dozens and dozens and maybe hundreds of young kids here. You can. You have to do some things, and that's what I just spoke about. But you can. I don't think that the excuse that young people aren't interested and don't want to be involved is one that anybody should tolerate. I think you just have to bring them in. You have to help them feel that Judaism, living Jewishly, has a way of making their lives better, which it does. You have to let them know that there's this really cool, vibrant, warm community. It might, by the way, not lead to more seats here on a Shabbat morning. We have to change the way we understand and evaluate success. Most of our kids come on Friday night. Most of our young adults come on Friday night. But if we can tolerate that people are going to consume Judaism differently, then this can continue to be the really proud Jewish community that it's been for hundreds of years. I believe it can be that. It's really nice hanging out with all of you this Shabbat. Thank you for having me. Can I take some questions? Rabbi, is that okay? Can I take a couple of questions from people here?
Rabbinic approval.
I have rabbinic approval. Perfect. Okay. You're first. Wonderful.
Yeah, so then how do you address that?
I think that's amazing. You have people who come to your services who are not members. What is the question?
Oh, well, how do you address that issue?
So the way we address that is that we have Jeffrey Gertner and Lorraine Sandler, who are our versions of Phyllis, and they welcome those people in. So if the question that you're asking is, how do we... I'm actually sorry. I'm still not sure what the question.
I think we have a few people that.
How do you get them to be members? Is that what you're
Well,
asking?
yeah, how do you,
How do you make
that's
them
how what I
pay to
wanted
be
to
a
say.
member?
Yeah.
I would suggest half a dinar per day.
Yeah, half a dinar per day, exactly. And make them climb the roof. Maybe they can go up. I saw there's a back entrance through the parking lot in this building. Look, yes, it is important for people to become members because at the end of the day, this place has to pay for
Right,
itself and
right.
to exist forever. I think the right people asking them at the right time often helps, right? Sometimes that, and I know you try, right? And I'm sure that happens. I think there has to be a tolerance for a certain number of people who are not going to become members. I then wonder what else I can do. So beyond the money, how can they contribute in another way that's meaningful? That's where, for me, the volunteer pieces come in. We do have a rule of Tzedek, you can't lead a small group. You can be in one, but you can't lead one unless you are a member. So we do try to incentivize it in different ways. You can't come to our high holiday services without being members, and that's one of the important things.
May I do some answering, if I may?
Sure.
Because I know where you're coming from. We, in comparison to Toronto, have a smaller community. And just on a personal basis, when I first started, I was not allowed as a shamas to give aliyahs on Mondays and Thursdays mornings to non-members. How would I tell who was a member, who wasn't? They came to say Kaddish. So I made an executive decision by saying, no, first of all, we're going to welcome them. And if they're coming to say Kaddish, we're going to offer them an aliyah and make sure that they're part of the congregation, a community congregation. To answer your question in a very long way, as long as we are welcoming and continue to be welcoming and not worry too much about when are they going to become a member and continue to welcome them, guess what? By osmosis, they will become a member. As long as we don't try to push it, we're looking at our numbers, we're shrinking, we need more members. So let's not be in a hurry to make them members because, as he pointed out, that membership model is going to change. What you and I know as members that we grew up in will be changed in 5 years. It could be associates, it could be pay-as-you-go, it could be monthly fees. So this is changing, but what we cannot change is the welcoming thing that Phyllis does, and the welcoming things that we have at Daily Minyan. When somebody comes in, they say, hello, welcome. I don't know how many synagogues you've been to, but when I've traveled, very few synagogues, when you walk in, will say hello to you. Let's be different. Let's make that the first step and give them. Anyway, that's my short answer.
I really like that answer. It resonates with me. I also believe that your synagogue is not full at the moment, right? Even in this place, it's not full. It was quite full today. Thank you for coming. Made me feel really good. There's room. There's room in this community, right? Yes, we want them to become members, but don't miss opportunity to have them here. Ask them at the right times. Have the right people asking them. Maybe ask them to start making donations if they're coming to say Kaddish. Encourage them. Find ways to do that. What we have found, so the question everybody asks me is, well, are you going to be able to keep those people as members, right? So we have all these new members, are we able to keep them? We don't know yet. We don't know. We're not going to keep all of them. We know that. We know we're going to have new people who join this year also. Some people are going to turn 40 and they are going to start paying. Other people won't. We believe that if we connect with them enough, coffee dates, getting them to come to programs, reaching out to them. They see their meaning. It's an ongoing thing. So we're giving ourselves like 3 years. We think we need 3 years. So the people who are 37 and younger are the ones we really are thinking about in terms of, can we get them to stay? But you know what is happening already? You know who are becoming members? Their parents. We have one of the wealthiest families in Toronto. I was shocked by this. I was at a meeting, and I'd actually never really spoken to her before, and she came up to me and said, "Oh, my kids just became members of your shul. And my daughter-in-law just had a baby a few weeks ago." I said, "Your kids just became members of our shul. Are you members?" She's like, "No, go somewhere else." They became members because of this new thing. This is one of the wealthiest families in Toronto. They could pay membership anywhere for all of us, and it wouldn't be anything for them. And she said, "My daughter had a baby, so what did I do?" I said, "Well, first of all, that's wonderful." Left the meeting. I called the daughter-in-law. We set up a baby naming. I didn't know her before. She's now coming to our, Friday morning Shabbat Baby and Me program. We're going to keep them. I believe we're going to get the mother also at some point. Look, and it's definitely not about taking people from other synagogues, that's for sure. But it's all little pieces. It's all little pieces, and I wouldn't worry too much about the people who aren't paying at the moment. Get people in. The people who are already members will like to see other people here, right?
It's wonderful that 900 members, young people.
Well, young people. Other questions? Okay, over there.
Thank you.
There's
You're welcome.
a corollary to what Bill said about not giving non-members alleles. When I was 3 different occasions, I was the interim shamus. We didn't give aliyot weekdays to the non-members that were there. We'd be taking out the Torah and looking at it. So the other thing, being in Toronto, which is a very unique opportunity, are you using like alumni from USDS or from Camp Ramah to get these young adults?
So, yes, so we're working through those partnerships. They've actually gone a little bit shakier over the years, but now we're trying to reestablish them. There is actually a USDS school in our building, right? And so yes, many of those families are now starting to become members, and they didn't before. But yeah, we always have to think about how do we do that. So, in a place like this where what I'm hearing is that BBYO is thriving in the city, that's a gold mine of young teenagers who are feeling connected and inspired, right? How do we tap into some of those things? There's a lot of good things in this community, right? I'm not coming to talk to you in a place where there's one Jew standing, right? There's so many of you doing wonderful things. How do we work that into synagogue life here some more?
Thank you.
Sorry, say your names. We forgot to do that part. Yeah.
Yes, I'm Amy Karlinski, and I'm chair of the membership committee. And Deb Stern is on my committee. It's not really a question, but I just wanted to reflect a little bit on what you said, which I really appreciated, which was that we're going to have to tolerate that Judaism, and I don't want to misconstrue your words, might have to be consumed differently. So just in terms of, there's a certain generational expectation about what participation and engagement looks like. Yes. Is the mic on?
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't lose. I paint with the mic, too.
It's because you paint with it.
There's a certain, I think, generational expectation about what, the structure that we set up and the kind of participation models that we might have. So I appreciated your point about we might have to tolerate that Judaism might be consumed a little bit differently. And I'm wondering, so I know you talked about all these wonderful things that you've talked about all these wonderful things that you've done on relational Judaism, which sounds so exciting, and exciting for us potentially. But I'm wondering if you can say a little bit more around that sense of tolerance.
So I would say really what I mean by that is in all communities, we want our synagogues to be full, right? And we all speak about a time where 600 people came to shul every Shabbat. I've actually never, ever been in a shul where there were 600 people without like many simchas on a regular Shabbat. Right? I've never seen it, but apparently it's existed in every single community, and we romanticize those periods. In Bet Tzedek, apparently that was like in the 1960s, so that was a long time ago. So we built a sanctuary that can fit 2,800 people. We don't, So the hope for some people was, we're going to have this new membership. It means that we're going to have more people in synagogue on Shabbat morning. And just like most communities, getting people to come back after COVID, because we also live stream, has been difficult. It's happening. It is happening. And we now have, got some strollers, probably like 20, 25 strollers every Shabbat morning, which is lovely. But that's not where the majority of these young members are participating with us. We get the most, obviously, during high holidays. That was the most. But they're coming to the small groups. We have small groups specifically for them. They are coming to the 20s and 30s Shabbat dinners and parties, to the family programming. I was shocked by this, 180 people showed up to a young family Tu B'Shvat program this year. Really, I thought 20 people were going to show up. 180 people showed up for that. And the thing is that the people who come to shul regularly on Shabbat morning don't see that. So they're wondering, where are all these people? We just started, we were struggling with morning minyan. Something that we did was we counted, like you do here, we counted if there's a minyan, so we use Zoom during the week and live stream on Shabbat. So if we could see that there is a minyan between Zoom and in person, during COVID we were counting that as a minyan. But as of last Shavuot, we said, it's time to stop that. We need to get people to come back in. So we're no longer counting that as minyan, which means we won't say Kaddish anymore, right? That's an incentive for people, right? So not enough, and there's still some days where we struggle, and we have to run around the building or call people, get them to come in, which is good because it makes us feel like a small community that we have to bring people in, and people have to take responsibility. We tried using an app. Now we have a WhatsApp group to do it. And so some people are upset, like, if all these new members, it's free for them, they should come to make minyan in the morning at the very least. And so we are working on that. We are trying to get them to take some responsibility. But that's what we want. We have this sense that we want our synagogue on Shabbat morning to be full, and we do. So some of the things that we've done is, how do we make sure that some of our older members can see some of those other moments? So we had pre-Pesach a Shabbat dinner. It was open to the whole community, and I organized the 20s and 30s Shabbat dinner the same night. We all davened together, so we had 250 people for services on a Friday night, and then we had 2 separate dinners. But the older members who came out were absolutely kvelling, right? They finally got it. On Purim, when we had 500 people who came to a family, carnival before Megillah started, and then we had over 300 people who stayed for Megillah reading, and then I had 100 people with me in a bar for a tequila tasting, including Margaret's grandson. Yeah, it was something like that, yeah. I think it was Megillah meets tequila, I think is what we ended up with, but you're right. That's a wild night for us, and some of our older members got to see it. So that's, I would say, the other piece is we have to change our expectations of exactly what success looks like. You still want to bring them in for Shabbat morning. We want to make Shabbat morning as relevant as possible. You have to bring back your family service. For sure, there are things like that that have to happen. There needs to be toys. We have to be okay with noise in our shuls. Those are the things that I remember being in Shaarei Zedek, where you had that in the back of, the sanctuary, right? Yeah. I remember that, yeah.
I still have people upset with us because we didn't have it for the high holidays.
Good. Let them be upset and change it.
That's not good. They won't talk to me.
Well, I think if there's anger about that, that's good. It means they want in. I'm gonna end here. I'll end with one last thought, which is
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, is there another? Okay,
Yeah, and
let's take one more question.
Could I add one more thing?
Sure. We'll have her go first.
Yeah. Here, I'll hold the mic in case you talk with your hands.
This is more.
What's your name?
My name is Rahik.
Rahik?
Yeah. This isn't a question. It's just my experience so far. So I lived in Toronto for a little bit. I lived there with my husband at the time. And he wasn't really interested in really getting to know the synagogues there. He's Israeli. But we would only go for holidays. And we would go to the synagogues in the area. We lived on Bathurst and Chabad, Bathurst and Lawrence. So there was plenty of synagogues. So we would go there for the holidays, and that was really it. You know, on Shabbat, we really didn't go. Just had Shabbat at home. But I was always really interested in getting to know how to get involved in the synagogues in Toronto. But whenever we go on the holidays, like, there wasn't really any incentive to, you know, get to know us or get to know anybody. So it was just kind of like a past thought, right? Now I'm here, and I met Cindy, and it was just because I was looking for a mezuzah, and she was able to find me one. And then she let me know that if I wanted to get involved in the Jewish community here, there's a few things going on. And so now I've come to Asher Zedek, Temple Shalom, for the third time, yeah? And I just wanted to give you guys a compliment that I do feel very included. I'm not a member, but it has been nice that it wasn't even mentioned. I didn't even realize it. And you've just been giving me an experience, and I'm really happy about it. And I get to know everybody every time. It's very fun. So just a compliment. Sorry.
Cindy, the check is in the mail.
So I want to just respond to that and say, first of all, that's brave and courageous to share that. And you have a living human example that a lot of things are going right over here. Right? So, Yasher Koach to you all. You should all feel good about it. One last
thing.
and then I want to
I'm going to take advantage of him being here to do a bit of marketing 101. There's a subcommittee to the membership committee, which there's a lady back there whose name I won't mention. She calls it Butts and Seats Committee. And I love that because she called me and she said, "Are you interested in joining the Butts and Seats Committee?" So I checked my butt and I said yes. But the idea is this. We have a very active Chavara online. They are very supportive of each other. This is a YouTube live. So those of us who've led services can see this. They look forward to each other. So my proposal was, let's leave that one alone. We don't have Winnipeg people who participate who are not part of that group, but they like being home because they're older, they're sick, they're this, that, all excuses. But that doesn't mean that we can't build alongside of that what we used to have, the physical 10 or more. Because we are Kaddish-centric here. Those who come to say Kaddish, whether they know it or not, having 10 or more people is an automatic support. So this is my marketing line. You've heard it. Help us. Any daily service, Shabbat is a different animal. Any daily service, the 13 other services, if you can make us and give us 20 minutes or 30 minutes during the week, come. We want to build back that support for those who are coming to say Kaddish and others. We'd like to build back that schmooze group in the morning that annoyed us and we love them, and everything else in between. So this is my pitch today, formally beginning, and the chairperson can speak for herself. But now you see what we've been talking about while you haven't been able to make meetings. So thank you very much, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you for having me. I'll let you know I'm planning on coming to Morning Minyan tomorrow, so if you want to hang out with me some more, you can come help make an in-person Minyan. I'm not, by the way, suggesting that you need to go to the only in-person Minyan mile for St. Kaddish. I don't know if that's right for your community. I want to end with this. We say, right, when we say our toast, we say L'chaim. One of my favorite teachings about why do we say L'chaim, that what does the word Chaim mean? It means life. And so the letters Chet, Yud, Yud, Mem, so the two Yuds in the middle represent two individuals, two Yidden, two Jews. And when we get two or more people together, especially in a physical room, we get the letters on the outside, Chet and Mem, which spells Cham, which is warmth and love. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you. Thank you, Yaakov. Yasher Koach. Take a rest.
Time for a Shabbat Shalom, yeah.
I guess that's one of the perks of not having your family.
100%. They're actually
So
gonna be
I can relate to that.
I got really excited thinking you're coming to Winnipeg, but you're not.
I'm just here for Shabbat. Nice
Thank
to
you.
see you.
Shabbat Shalom. It was wonderful. I have to tell you,